Saying that I'm a fan of Venom would be a bit of an understatement. Eddie Brock is my favorite fictional character ever. On top of that, I adored Mike Costa's work on the Venom book over the last couple of years. But what bothers the hell out of me is that his run is ending abruptly, and it never really got much of a push in the first place, despite selling consistently. Mike Costa's Venom outsold Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther on the regular, and Panther is this big push that Marvel is really proud of, and it feels like they're trying to shovel this guy under the carpet. He never got the accolades that he deserved for such a good book. I mean, Mike Costa is a guy who wrote God is Dead, a critically acclaimed indie comic, and then went into writing one of Marvel's biggest villains / anti-heroes ever, and it feels like it went completely under the radar in the press. Now, thankfully, the sales speak for themselves, and I'm hoping that Mike Costa made a decent chunk of change from writing this. He's probably my favorite writer of the character since David Michelinie, who created Eddie Brock 30 years ago. So, since I took a break from comic reviews, let me say this. Everything Venom that has come out lately has been a lot of fun to read. From Mike Costa's run to the Poison trilogy from Cullen Bunn, which is Venomverse, Poison X, and Venomized, plus the crossover of Venom Inc., are all worth your cash if you're looking for a solid action comic that had consistently very good art. My favorite arc was probably Lethal Protector 2.0, which saw the return of Mark Bagley as artist for the character. Now granted, I'm a bit biased there because Bagley is my favorite Spider-Man and Venom artist. So, since it is Venom's 30th anniversary, I figured I'd return back to reviewing comic books, or roasting them depending on your perspective, and talk about the brand new Venom #1, written by Donny Cates and drawn by Ryan Stegman. Now, if Donny Cates' name sounds familiar, it's because he recently wrote the second arc of the most recent Thanos comic, called Thanos Wins. I also believe he was writing Doctor Strange, but I wasn't reading that book, so I can't say anything about it. But the Thanos story, Thanos Wins, was an interesting story well told, but I wasn't as enamored with it as some people were. Needless to say, I'm a bit skeptical going into the book. Reason being is the concept. Cates said in an interview that he was going to try to take Venom in a horror direction and in a mystical direction. Now the first, immediately I can get behind. Venom has always been a monster. Like many monsters, you're either freaked out by him or you find him oddly appealing. Personally, I think it's the biceps. Yeah, the teeth and tongue never bugged me that much. Unless Eric Larson was, drawing him, because Eric Larson sucks. However, I'm not sold on this idea of Venom sliding into the mystical. At least not out of the gate. I think that his strengths lie in both street-level stories and science fiction. The last time that this sort of thing was done, to my memory, for this character, was Spirits of Venom, and honestly, it wasn't that much to write home about. Not great, but not bad in any stretch of the imagination. Just pretty good. Part of the reason being was that, in that story, there wasn't much of a reason for Venom to be around aside from just killing Spider-Man. Characters like Eddie tend to just be there, as opposed to contributing anything of note. A more recent example would be the Scarlet Spider, yes, he's alive again, in the crossover Damnation. He was just there. So, where we last left Eddie, he had left another spawn of his symbiote with Alchemax for safekeeping. Now, Eddie has regrown the long hair, lost his job, and is now taking antipsychotics to shut down his symbiote after a nightmare. Yeah, immediately I was raising my eyebrow. Though it seems to be an immediate step back from Mike Costa's run, what's happening here is temporary. What the purpose of the opening seems to be is to establish that there's a mental problem with the symbiote, not Eddie, nor is there a biological problem like there was before. Plus, they want to add some intrigue here. How? Well, answer this question for me. Why would a symbiote who didn't come to Earth until after Secret Wars be dreaming about Beowulf or a Norse setting? Especially considering that symbiotes don't dream. Afterwards, we find that Eddie's going out to do his best Peter Parker impersonation and make some cash via photography sale. So he watches a supervillain arms deal go bad, and after a cop gets shot, he decides to step in. But it's here when things start to go south. There's apparently a new jack-o'-lantern. And then shortly after Eddie stops him, Ugh, there is now a formerly new Jack-o'-lantern. There is no better way to reinvent yourself as a heroic person, more so than gouging someone's eyes out with your thumbs, Eddie. Great job, buddy. And whoa, yeah, the black and red, not really a good look for you, dude. So, apparently the Venom symbiote is possessed. Yeah. Beyond that, it looks like the whole thing is sort of coming out of nowhere. I know this is supposed to be building some sort of intrigue, but I don't find myself intrigued. If anything, it feels kind of random. Anyway, Eddie gets blown up and captured because this is sort of how Venom stories tend to go beat for beat when a new writer takes over. Something weird happens, Eddie gets captured, Eddie's put in a position where he can't use his symbiote, and then he gets a talking to. In this case, it's some dude who thinks that Flash Thompson is still Venom for some reason, and I have a question to ask. Why is that even being brought up? It's been pretty well established between Mike Costa's work, Eddie's appearances in Amazing Spider-Man, and even in X-Men Blue, that Eddie Brock is Venom again, that it's common knowledge. Heck, people on the street in New York acted like Agent Anti-Venom was already a known commodity. Ugh, I hate editing fluffs like this. Anyway, so the guy who has Eddie tied to a chair is apparently part of a former Black Ops group. The two reminisce about Flash Thompson's time as Venom during the Rick Remender run, and for those who don't know, the basics are that Flash was part of a revamping of Project Rebirth, using a symbiote to make someone into a super soldier. Now, according to this old dude, it's not the first time this has been done, and immediately there are two problems here, and both of them are that there are retcons going on, and I hate retcons when they're unnecessary. Or at least they feel unnecessary. First, it's already been established that Project Rebirth was the beginning of the Weapon Plus program. It's the same one that spawned Captain America, Wolverine, Nuke, Deadpool, Cyber, Phantom X, and so forth. So immediately that's a bit silly to start with. Which part do these guys fit into? Which Weapon Plus program segment are they? Which one was Flash Thompson? Are they technically Weapon 1 like Captain America is? Or what? Granted, that was an issue in Rick Remender's run as well. Second, the Venom symbiote was the first symbiote on Earth. This is a run with this comic as a whole. If these creatures had been on Earth before, why wasn't there an easier time in handling them during Planet of the Symbiotes or Maximum Carnage? So there's gonna need to be a bit of explaining here, a bit of fleshing out, or else these kind of plot threads are just gonna be left dangling and are gonna drive me insane. But apparently this guy is a symbiote expert somehow, and we do find a few things. We find out that symbiotes apparently have names. Also, Eddie apparently doesn't know shit because he doesn't know the ideal temperature and what the symbiote likes to eat. He does know these things, though. He knows that if he doesn't give the symbiote phenethylamine and adrenaline on a consistent basis, then the symbiote will start to crave brains, like it did in the Venom miniseries The Hunger. That's why, back in the day, Eddie would wolf down giant bags of chocolate to keep the thing from devouring craniums. Also, considering that one of the symbiote's weaknesses is heat, I think he knows ideal temperature too, man. This little diatribe does explain why Eddie hasn't aged in years, but aside from that, this little dressing down is very poorly researched and poorly written. It could have been done better. Thing is, the book actually does pick up after this. I kind of feel like this conversation is a bit of a hiccup. The old dude, who identifies himself as Rex Strickland, former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, wants Eddie to give him a hand. Apparently the symbiotes that his former unit were using bonded to their hosts, and somehow that bonding process drove them insane. They were put on ice and thrown under the rug. Since that means with S.H.I.E.L.D. that they're probably going to get killed, Rex does not want these men to die, and understandably so. I mean, they were part of a unit together. Military brotherhood and all that. Let me say this, real quick. The art in this comic is great, and it's setting the tone very well, especially in this scene. Despite the dialogue problems, the art is consistently good, and I love this panel here that shows Rex's face, and how this hardened combat veteran is near tears, thinking that his friends, these people that he fought with, killed with, saved possibly more than once from dying, are about to bite the bullet. So Eddie agrees to help, because he wants to get some answers too. And so we get to see Eddie stand across from possible corrupt SHIELD agents, and when they try to run him over, he tanks a freaking 18-wheeler like he's Hancock. And just to talk a little bit more about the art, this splash page here looks freaking amazing. As in, this is my new wallpaper amazing. Now, the whole turn that the symbiote had is still on Eddie's mind, and as he opens the trailer of the truck, he finds out he's not the only person suffering from a symbiote STD. Remember, folks, Venom says that you should practice safe symbiote bonding. Only you can protect your other from looking like a melted fruit roll-up. This message paid for by Eddie Brock. Now, unfortunately for Eddie, his streak of explosions isn't done yet. As he opens the vehicle, he finds out that he's a bit too late. Now, those Project Rebirth, Weapon Plus, whatever soldiers look like a mix between Nemesis from Resident Evil and Finn Balor's body paint that he abandoned for virtue signaling to gay people. They say something, and it freaks out the Venom symbiote, something you don't see very often. From there, it's basically bring on the impalement for Eddie, since the symbiote is so scared it left him defenseless from these things. Something is rather obviously wrong, because the bond that seemed stronger again not a minute prior got all jacked up. And it's all too late, sadly. The soldiers' corpses get tossed aside by something that was in that truck, and afterwards the symbiote translates what was said by those soldiers as he's repairing Eddie's wounds. God is coming. This comic has me intrigued. There's this constant mood of darkness and foreboding in this comic that I have to say I'm enjoying. My main gripe is the continuity problems. Now, if Donny Cates can rein in that little bit, or expand on it in a way that makes sense, I can definitely get behind where this is starting to go, because he kind of had this problem at the beginning of his run on Thanos too. The downside is, like I said earlier, this could end up being a bit like taking a character and making him a fish out of water. So there's potential for good storytelling here, but it could also go south quick. As for the art, holy crap! Ryan Stegman's pencils combined with J.P. Meyer's ink work makes this comic have an amazing atmosphere that, honestly, I haven't seen in a comic like this in a while. It honestly reminds me of the high points of Scott Snyder's run on Swamp Thing. Oh god. Scott Snyder writing Venom. That would be cool. But anyway, when you look at the panels that I'm showing, you can just feel that ominous and dark tone just crawl up your spine. It's great work, and given Marvel's recent history of hiring crap artists, I'm really happy to see that there are some damn good ones that they're still hiring out there. All in all, I do recommend the new #1 issue of this volume of Venom, but it's a cautious recommendation. Be warned that if you're a continuity stickler like I am, you may not enjoy it. I can let it slip a bit, mostly because of how the book picks up in the second half. Where these things go from here will be interesting, that's for sure, because apparently Miles Morales is going to have his first interaction with this version of Venom in issue #3. You have to keep in mind, a Venom from a different universe killed Miles' mom, so we'll have to see where things go from here. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like button, and hit that notification bell as well, so you'll be reminded of any new videos that I put out. Until next time, my name is Micah Curtis. Welcome to my crusade. Deus Volt!